Welcome in to the Paul Kuharsky podcast. I'm Paul Kuharsky of paulkuharsky.com, part of 440 Sports, and brought to you by Zen Sports. Great place to bet. I was trying to wait on a football show to be done. They were running long. I sent the text. I didn't want to keep people waiting, and I see you coming in. So sorry to overlap with them. They pre-recorded, and they said they were going to be an hour, and they're not. Good to see you. Lots to talk about from training camp. Please go ahead and retweet for people on Twitter so that they could come and join us. G was in here and being patient, complimenting my article on Jeff Simmons, which I appreciate. Want to talk about a couple things before we dive into questions, and I reveal a little new feature for members, which I think is going to be cool moving forward. So let's dive in. I've watched a lot of Calvin Ridley through camp so far, which is a little longer than a week now. And this guy runs unlike anybody we've seen running on the Titans field in a long time. Certainly anybody that we've seen run on the offensive side of the ball. It's a natural stride. I haven't had a chance to talk to him about if he's worked with the Titans speed guy, who's an addition now to the training staff. But even if he has been working with that guy, it hasn't been very long. This guy's just such a natural runner, and it's a beautiful thing to watch him in the open field, even to watch him just run out a catch, after you're quote unquote tackled or tagged, but you're expected as a ball carrier with the Titans, with any football team, to run things out. Watching Calvin Ridley run, if you have a chance to be at a Titans training camp, I think there are still 2 that open tickets were available to. I know a lot of season ticket holders and sponsors and the like have a chance to be out there, and there are 2 home preseason games that people are going to see. But if you haven't seen Calvin Ridley run yet, paying close attention to Calvin Ridley, and he did light up the Titans for 2 100-yard games last year. Really something special, something different. Great route runner. You've seen highlights of him shaking people at the line of scrimmage to get open. But what he can do once he's got some space and can open up, or gets off the line of scrimmage and beats somebody and is able to run under a pass. And Will Levis was talking about it this week, just yesterday, about needing to calibrate with him still to catch up to his speed, to learn and understand his speed, to calibrate deep balls to him. It's not often that a big-armed quarterback needs to really figure out the speed of his deep guy in that way. Something to behold. Really impressive, really different. And, we talk about the Titans' struggle at wide receiver for going on 25 years now. Really something to watch. Also, Arden Key's pending suspension. I hope you'll read Mike Herndon's piece yesterday. I had a long list of guys who are out there as possibilities. Carl Lawson in Dallas today was the expectation. Carl Lawson's a guy the Titans should have been looking at before Arden Key got suspended, who Brian Callahan's familiar with from Cincinnati. Had some back problems early last year before the Jets season started, maybe spilt into the season a little bit, but then was reportedly healthy and was a healthy scratch some of the time because the Jets are so deep at edge and so happy with their other options at edge. I think Carl Lawson could be an influential player this season, and he certainly could be an influential player for the Titans, who are going to be without Arden Key for 6 games, and who were thin at edge without Arden Key. Shane Ray has looked pretty good in a couple practices so far. Shane Ray has been out of the league for 5 years, hasn't played a game in 5 years because of injuries. So he could be a great reclamation story. But Shane Ray, the odds of him being an every down edge player for the Titans are very, very low. And I just heard Zach saying in a football show, you can't make the leap to hearing a few of us say he's looked good in a couple practices to thinking that means like he's going to be a big time player for the Titans. That's a massive expectation that's unreasonable to put on him. I think he can be a contributor. You know, I like him right more, and I like him now right more. I like him more right now than I like Caleb Murphy. But that's not saying much. That's back end of the outside linebacker rotation, and they need somebody to be front end of the outside linebacker, of the edge rotation, to go opposite Harold Landry, who's taking the snaps as the number 2 outside linebacker on opening day. That is a very difficult call. Go read Mike Herndon's piece. Covers everybody that's even a thought, plus 2 trade options, which would be very hard to pull off considering the Titans traded their third for L'Jarius Sneed. So they're in trouble already. People want to talk here about Jeffery Simmons. So let me hit first on my thoughts then, and then I will take some questions. Look, I think the PR staff, and I tweeted about this yesterday. This is one thing the Titans do very well at PR, and I'm critical of them in other areas, but I made a point of tweeting this yesterday. The Titans are very, very good when something is going on with a guy that's controversial. This happened when Nicholas Petit-Frere got his, came back from his gambling suspension. Other instances that I'm not remembering off the top of my head. They did it with Jeff Simmons yesterday. After he had his outburst with Buck Rising on, what's today? Thursday. So it was on Tuesday. A bad scene. Jeff talked it out with Buck. Before practice, after practice, they made Simmons available. Now, Simmons was surely coached on what he needed to say, how he needed to come across. But he got in front of cameras and tape recorders. He said his piece. He answered some questions. Short, compact, efficient, but did what he needed to do, and now can say, I'm not talking about that anymore. I've answered those questions. Refer back to that day. Now, do we buy that he's a changed man out of this one incident? Look, you want to believe the best out of a guy, right? I've been in that situation. I think all of us have to some degree, where you behave foolishly, you feel embarrassed about it, and you're asking for some grace. And on a human level, I understand that about him. But we've heard from Jeff before, that's not who I am. And it is a little bit of who he is. Rashad Weaver, I thought, had a very good statement. I wasn't part of it. I read it in somebody else's piece, probably Rex Road, where he said, Jeff's anger is something that gets us going. And it's difficult. And this is a football story as old as time, to cross the line and say, be angry over there and have it be a thing that benefits us. And then when you step over here, stop being angry. And that's one of the things about football that makes it interesting and makes it complicated. And Simmons is asked to do that. And I don't doubt that it's a difficult thing to do, but he needs to do better at it than he's done. I think he's been enabled to do it. I talked to somebody on the previous staff who asked me if there's anybody on this staff who can control Simmons. And I said, through Tuesday, it was apparent that there wasn't. Now, there were people that convinced him of what the next best right thing was, and he clearly did that. But we're going to find out going forward with him. So, we'll see from there. Arthur Kim is saying here, would you believe Pac-Man Jones had changed if he said this isn't who he was? I think that's a big jump to go from Jeff Simmons to Pac-Man Jones. Pac-Man Jones was involved in a lot of criminal behavior off the field, and Jeffery Simmons has not been involved in any criminal behavior off the field. So I would not lump the two of them together. And Jeffery Simmons has a lot of good-heartedness in him. He's been the team's Walter Payton Man of the Year. He does a lot of good and charitable work. He's got leadership qualities. We're going to get more into his leadership later. But he fires up the team. He does good community work. At his best, he's a very good player. not as good as he is cast to be by the Titans, not as good as he is cast to be by himself, certainly not since the new contract, certainly not in the last 2 years when injuries have bothered him, but very good with the potential to be excellent. Those things are not nothing, but I've been critical of him along with others, and that criticism is something that he's not handled and needs to handle better. We're going to circle back to this in a little while. A couple other things I wanted to touch on here. Levis is facing a very tough defense. The front line defense right now is giving him a hard time. The offensive line is getting beat by the defensive line for a lot of pressure. And the cornerbacks are living up to their billing, even with the Woozy out and even with Snead out some of the time. Jarvis Brownlee, I called him Travis in a tweet by accident yesterday. He deserves more respect than a mistake by me. It is, clearly the kind of guy they wanted to draft. Looks like a 5th-round home run right now. It's early. Trey Avery's playing well. These guys are in the face of the receivers and playing tight and good coverage. Not that the receivers aren't making some plays, but so Malik Willis looks really good against the threes. The third team defense, and I credit Malik Willis. He's put together 3 good days. He's clearly improved. He's doing better staying in the pocket. He's doing better not climbing the pocket for no reason. Nick Holtz talked about this the other day. He used to climb the pocket for no reason, go into trouble instead of being patient and just staying back. Now he's doing a better job of staying back and knowing that he's got the arm strength to make up for that space that he used to take. He's looked quite good, which I'm not taking that away from him, but he's playing against a very bad defense. The Titans' depth is very bad. Stoney's asking if I've seen any of these receivers take Brownlee deep. Seems like a lot of these good clips are him playing short underneath stuff. He is playing a share, Stoney, of inside. He kicks inside sometimes. But off the top of my head, I'm not thinking of him covering deep a great deal. But I confess that I do not chart these things to the degree that some other people do. I'm not the super grit, detail training camp guy that some others are. I'm more broad view. So we've got that, and the question might be better answered by somebody that looks very specifically charting plays. I want to introduce a new feature here that is going to be for members only. And if you're not a member of the site, this is a reason. And members don't even know this is coming. A few do. And I'm going to introduce a few examples of it. And the first person I'm going to use as an example is not a member of the site. He's a member of my family. But you guys know I really like the interaction here, the Q&A, and I really miss the conversational element that I've had when I had a full-time radio show. I get it a little bit on the Robbie and Rex Road, but even there, it's more about texting, and here it's more about your written questions. And even this won't be back and forth conversation, but we'll at least hear some people's voices. So going forward, members in this kind of context are going to be able to have their voices heard here. And it's going to work something like this. We're going to have input from members or family members. Here's a question from a viewer/listener.
Hi, this is Simon Kuharsky. I was wondering, who do you think out of the receivers on the Titans will gain the most fantasy points over the year?
So Simon wants to know who's.
This is Simon Kuharsky.
Well, we don't have to hear from him twice. He wants to know who's going to gain the most fantasy points out of the Titans receivers this year. It's not an easy question to answer, and the Titans are very good at receiver compared to what they've been in the past, but that doesn't make them a fantasy guy per se, a lead fantasy guy. If I'm drafting and I see Calvin Ridley there at a certain point, I'm going to take him because I think he's going to score some big play touchdowns, and big play touchdowns are attractive in fantasy ball. But how many catches is he going to get? I think the Titans are going to spread the ball around. So when Simon's fantasy draft comes around, I would tell him to take Calvin Ridley at a certain point first, DeAndre Hopkins in PPR second, and Tyler Boyd in the PPR third. Here's how this interactive feature is going to work. I'm going to give members a phone number, and they can call this phone number and leave me a voicemail. I will sort through the voicemails, and I will play the voicemails in podcasts and answer them. So I gave the all 22 this voicemail as well, and I will play 2 more throughout this podcast, and we will have fun with that. I ask everybody right now, let's all retweet this on Twitter. If we're watching on Twitter, we'll get a little bit of a bigger crowd going in here, and we will continue the conversation. So I hope people like that new feature. It comes with one other big exciting thing that is going on at paulkuharsky.com that is going to be revealed shortly. Seems like good reaction from people. If you're not a member, you're not going to be able to do that. And I'm going to rely more on those than I'm going to rely on comments. So it's a way to enhance the value of membership and decrease what non-members get here. I see applause from James Purtle and Kim Dunaway and Jabari Martin and Trey Wynn, who I had a conversation with about this earlier today. So Adam Berkowitz is saying hello. I think he needed to bow out and listen later, which is very cool. Let's see what else you got. Quality upgrade. Nick D said, is it okay to cuss when you call B French, whose name I don't recognize? Yeah, within limits, you may cuss. But I think we should leave most of the cussing to me. Big pop-up, maybe, thinks Wiley will look better than Chig this year. There's a lot of that going around. And, it's funny because Wiley playing more with the ones behind the scenes in unreportable situations, which is now more visible in front of fans, was coinciding, frankly, with Mike Herndon predicting that Wiley would play more with the ones, which he had no information about. So that's a credit to Mike Herndon and tells you how good Chig was. I disagree with somebody in here, Devin, saying that Chig can't catch a cold. Chig's going to still be an important part of this football team. But the Titans need to be bigger in 3 wide, and Wiley is significantly bigger and gives them some size. And so I think that's an intelligent move for them. I'm going to pop back into my notebook here. The Titans hired Scott Cohen. I don't know, maybe his contract must have been up in Baltimore. He was director of football research in Baltimore. Director of football research in Baltimore is a big spot. Baltimore is very good at football research. Baltimore is, one of the best teams in the league at game management, at utilizing analytics in game. This guy was a GM candidate at various times for the Jets and the Texans. A GM candidate. The Titans have hired him. He's not even their primary guy because they already had Rob Ryderer as their primary guy, who's going to be the guy who's in Brian Callahan's ear during games about game management stuff and about, whatever analytics input he'll take during the game. Now, it's not going to be, I know some people picture this guy flooding information in, he's going to be part of the week. And, I don't know what, I'll talk more with Callahan about this. Do you want 4 pages? you want one page of the most important things to consider going into this game analytically about the other team, but then maybe, 3 times a game, say, hey, this is where we talked about X, a reminder or a specific situation comes up and you give me the numbers on that. And then, this is the kind of stuff Stretch did for Vrabel. But that this guy, Reederer, who was a he was in pro scouting, I think, or he was in scouting, that he has now got the resource of Scott Cohen, who for 9 years was director of football research for the Ravens, is, to me, a tremendous get. And the Titans keep, you say, well, this guy is under-titled. It's kind of like when they hired A.J. Highsmith, and he's, director of scouting over a director of college scouting and over a director of pro scouting, and it seems redundant. Well, they're just getting good people in. Seems smart, as long as the personalities are managed and the guys are cool and they're all pulling the rope in the same direction, they're getting a lot of good people in, it seems like. And this is a good thing. Scott Cohen, I wrote about it at the site. That's some good news. And toot my own horn here in a week where Jeffery Simmons was probably the biggest news, an event that happened right in front of people. Arden Key's suspension and Scott Cohen's hiring, you got from paulkuharsky.com. Why do we want to move? Adam Alsup asks, could Chig play the slot if Boyd were to get hurt? Seems like a spot for him to be the mismatch. Well, occasionally they're going to flow a tight end into the slot for mismatches. Wiley too. But slot receiver, you've got Boyd. You're going to want to occasionally flow Hopkins and even Ridley through there just for change-up sake. Jaquan Jackson, is he going to get some snaps there? If Kyle Phillips makes the team, he'd get an occasional snap there. Primarily, you're going to want it to be Boyd. Kane says top 4 receivers, Ridley, D-Hop, Boyd, and Burks have to be top 5 in the league for a wide receiving room. Well, I don't think anybody's scoring Burks as a big deal wide receiver around the league until he actually does something. I'm not. It looks good right now, and you're optimistic, but the odds are still higher that he gets hurt than that he is a big part of a top 4 wide receivers on a team with a top 5 wide receiver group. Ridley, D-Hop, and Boyd lack one major quality of top wide receivers around the league, youth. And there's only good speed in one of them. So is it a good group? Yes. Is it the best group the Titans have had in a long time? Yes. Is it Miami? Not real close to Miami. Jay, I don't think Kyle Phillips is making it either, but that means Jaquan Jackson is making it. And if Jaquan Jackson is making it, if he gets any offensive time, it would be in the slot. Adam asks about Farley. Farley made one really nice play yesterday where he was in tight coverage. A to Z had a good clip of it. He also made one terrible play where he started the furthest off I think I've ever seen anybody start off in a one-on-one drill. And then he turned inside while the receiver went outside, and he basically stopped and chased the guy at a jog and looked like he was hurt or disinterested or confused or all three. I understand people have high interest in Farley because he's a first-round pick, and I understand people may be rooting for Farley because he's got so far to come back from and because of the family tragedy and stuff. I can't see how Caleb Farley could find his way onto this roster. Can't see anyway. Josh, are we still seeing a large amount of wide receiver motions in Callahan's offensive scheme, and how much faster is this year's offense going to look? I think it'll look faster. I wrote about motions out of Saturday's practice at the stadium. I mean, not just motions, but a lot of those deep swinging motions that look like they're going to be an end around that don't wind up being an end around, but probably are having people think that they've got to consider an end around. And also these little loopy motions where a receiver, like I saw it a lot with Kuharsky Jackson, comes from wide and then kind of circles the quarterback before he settles next to him. It's a lot of interesting motions that are going to be a big part of it. Jabari says, give me Brownlee over Farley. I mean, that's a fait accompli. Have I seen anything impressive out of the inside linebacker group? Nick wants to know. I think Kenneth Murray is a better player than I thought in what and they're doing definitely what they said they were going to do and what we thought they'd need to do. And this was one of the better quotes in the last couple of days from Denard, the defensive coordinator, who said, you know, it's not about the green dot, it's about the green light. They're giving him a green light to go. And Kenneth Murray's a more interesting fellow, it's nice to find out he's an interesting fellow. He's been interesting to talk to. He makes a lot of plays in the run game. And you don't want him in space against a fast tight end or a running back. And you say that about virtually every inside linebacker on the team. Cedric Gray hasn't shown up at all. Gibbons looks a little bit faster to me. He says he thinks he's gotten faster. He shows up in the flat quickly, but he shows up in the flat quickly when he's untouched. So Gibbons can move fine when he's untouched. It's when he somebody's in his way and he has to get somewhere. He's not going to get to a tight end or to a running back. It's a problem. Robert says, when I say, here we go, let's hit that again. When I say assistants that can keep Simmons in check, was it more or less just Vrabel or Terrell Williams in the past keeping Simmons in line? I think both, and maybe Bowen. I don't know. I would think primarily Vrabel, and I would think Terrell Williams, had a pretty good relationship with Simmons, and I think control is the word that I use. Easton Freeze, whose broadcast I just watched. Thoughts on Callahan's negative things get magnified around here. Comment on Tuesday. How concerning. I'm like you, Easton. I hope it was like a one-off and I kind of just slid in there almost by accident. Maybe a little frustrated that the emphasis or the context there was some kind of offensive badness rather than the defensive goodness. Well, Brian, you're an offensive coordinator. You're here first and foremost because of your offensive resume. Yes, it's early in camp, but all of these days are, a picture of where the offense is today. And today, yesterday, particularly the day you asked the question that led to that sentence being jammed into that answer, offense wasn't very good. I think the question was about the timing. I bookmarked Joe Rexroad's tweet of that sentence, which I will go back to. I think all of us will go back to if it turns into a bigger thing. But as you guys were saying on a football show, that quote very much stands out as a outlier for Brian Callahan from anything else he said or his attitude about anything. I think he's been really good with us, really enlightening, and seems to have received everything that's been written very well. I just find it funny, like, everybody thinks I'm Mr. Negative. And in that very week, I had written 2 pieces about what I see as positive culture changes, the resilient and relentless as opposed to full tilt and how that was received by the team. And then one about how guys are feeling so much less stressed, which I think, is a lot of guys being a year older. But also a lot, I think Vrabel wanted guys on edge and welcomed them coming to work stressed out. And I think Callahan, while he wants guys in stressful situations at times, said from the start he wanted guys to be happy to come to work and look forward to coming to work. And I do think that's a healthier situation, particularly with today's player. And I wrote a happy story about that. Personally, I was thinking like, hey, man, magnifying the negative. I personally wrote two very positive stories about Callahan's culture in that week. So that was funny. Josh says, can we really be mad about Simmons cussing out Buck? Yeah, you'd be mad at a player for cussing out anybody. That's not behavior befitting a Titan. Better yet, the guy they're selling as Mr. Titan, which they should slow down on selling him as Mr. Titan. When a guy is Mr. Titan, when a guy is Derrick Henry or Kevin Byard, we know. You don't need to tell us. That they need to tell us so much is kind of an indictment of Jeff in my eyes. Let me tell you about Zen Sports, my sponsor. Great place to put down a bet. Go there, sign up for Zen Sports, use code TNPaul. Bet as little as $10 and get a free membership to paulkuharsky.com. Simple as that. If you haven't done that, I don't know why. But look, if you don't want that, you're paying me already, that's great. But you can go there and you can bet up to $1,000 on your first wager, never mind the $10. Get the free membership, and you're in no danger on your first wager, because if you lose it, if you bet something that's plus 500 or less, you get the money back. So you're either bankrolling yourself with a huge win, $1,000 at plus 500, look at that, or you get your money back. So you got a no risk bet. So, you got Olympics, you got Major League Baseball, you've got EPL coming up soon here. You can make college props coming up, college games coming up, NFL futures, all kinds of things. Go check them out. Zen Sports. Use code TNPaul. They've been great to me. I hope you'll be great to them. Let's see. I think it's time for another of our new special features. So let's head over to the audio section here, which I'm still learning a little bit about. And we're going to hear now from a great member of my All 22, Mr. John Kemper.
Hey, Paul, this is John Kemper speaking. I wanted to call in and ask you, how bad is the Titans' leadership problem right now? And to follow up with that, do you think that the talent gap on this team is just massive compared to the rest of the NFL? Thanks. Bye.
All right.
Hey,
so
Paul, this is John Kemper.
Yeah, I'm going to have to stop playing those twice, right? So that's a new feature. If you haven't heard, going to give out a phone number. You can, members only. You can leave me a voicemail, and I'll feature those voicemails prominently in podcasts. Not available if you're not a member. So if you want to be heard on here, which they're going to be prominent, as I said, you got to be a member of paulkuharsky.com. So what did he say? How bad is the leadership problem considering Simmons? And I just said, if you've got to keep anointing the guy a leader, that strikes me as a little bit of a problem. Defensively, I think leadership, there's a void. I've got a friend who famously says to our friend group all the time, she says, well, if you need somebody to emerge to do something, create a void, and somebody's got to step in. Well, the Titans have a void. Who are the candidates to fill this void in addition to Simmons? Well, I think Cheeto Awuzie could help fill this void. Now, he's out of the picture now for the better part of 2 weeks, though. Coach Callahan has talked about, the ability of guys like Awuzie and Snead, who's on a partial practice plan, to do plenty of leading despite the fact that they're not practicing. So I think those two guys are key guys that you would like to see. Jamal Adams can do a lot of leading if he is healthy and playing. And so far, he's healthy and he's participating. And he's got some immense leadership qualities and mojo. So on defense, I'm looking to the back end to supply the kind of juice that the Titans need. Kenneth Murray, maybe, I don't know. I do think there's a void and there's a problem, and that it's more than Simmons should be asked to bear, and that it's more than Simmons is capable of bearing. Offensively, I think Will Levis, a lot of it's just about Will Levis emerging. It's bestowed on him because it's bestowed on a quarterback. It's different than it being bestowed on Jeffery Simmons. It goes to the quarterback. He's got the moxie for it. Now, does he produce in a way that makes him worthy of it? They're going to follow him. I think he's going to lead in the right way. The question is he throwing picks? Is he making smart decisions? Are you looking to your quarterback, the leader, and saying, well, he's making good decisions, I got to make good decisions along with him? Or are you looking at your quarterback and saying, well, I'm following his lead, but boy, that was a stupid pick he threw with the game on the line. They're obviously missing Henry in a big way from that leadership. I think Hopkins is a heck of a leader, quiet, but boy, you can watch that guy and follow him, the way he works and the history of production he has and the expectation of production coming forward. I think Cushenberry is a good line leader, the sort that they've been missing. So I see a void potentially being filled there. Not the greatest leadership group ever, but also a largely new team with room for people to fill those voids, and candidates that can do it. Candidates that can do it. I'm more concerned on defense than I am on offense. So we'll take it there. About the roster, look, I think the frontline roster isn't that bad. The depth is bad. The depth is bad. I mean, you watch this second team defense, you got some real questions, particularly at like inside linebacker. The depth at corners, pretty damn good. The depth on the defensive line, depth at outside linebacker, really, really shaky. So I see your concerns there. Here's a really good question from Stoney. I like having Stoney in here. Maybe I ought to have Stoney on as a guest. Let me know what you think about that. I think Stoney would like that. Do I get the sense the coaching staff is actually as high on Jack Gibbons as they seem, or is it just public backing? The question here, Stoney, is who the hell else? Cedric Gray has done nothing. Otis Reese, I saw in a Wyatt write-up for making a play. It's the first time I've heard his name. There's no alternative there. Chance Campbell's got the athleticism to seem like he's a guy who should be a player, and he doesn't look like a player. So I don't think there's anybody on Gibbons' back, which is, as I was talking about depth issues there. I mean, they have a lot of inside linebackers, but none of them are particularly good. So I think that's the big problem there. Can he be a source of leadership? He's coming off the field in nickel, so can he lead? I mean, he's a likable guy who's that underdog story, who's made it despite the odds, yada, yada. He's have some leadership in him there. Yeah. But how much I think, and this is a big fight that I had with and this is where I got sideways with Logan Ryan, because he thought that leadership was tied to production and said so, which was counter to what Vrabel said. And he thought I set them up to be at odds when I was merely saying, look, here are two Super Bowl guys who have countering opinions on this issue. It's interesting how you can view it in different ways. I'm with Logan Ryan on this. I think to be a big-time leader, you have to be somewhat of a producer at the very least. I'm not looking for leadership, big-time leadership, and I don't think you have the stripes to offer big-time leadership if you're not producing much. And what percentage of snaps is Jack Gibbons going to play when the Titans are going to be in so much nickel and he's going to be standing on the sideline waiting for base? I don't know what provoked the Judon talk here, Trey, but unless something new has happened, Judon's kind of holding in right now. Would they take a fourth for him, and then the Titans would have to give him a big contract? Well, are they in position to give a big contract to an edge guy who's not super young? I don't know. I kind of have the same thing with Jack Gibbons. Stoney's saying the group chat's going to ream him for coming around on Jack Gibbons. Come around to Jack Gibbons to a time, and he'll play a couple good games, and then the team will come around that's smart enough to really isolate him and get tight ends and running backs in space against him, and his weakness will be exposed, and you'll say, damn, how could they be fielding that guy? G says, if Sweat is merely a space eater, then yeah, it was a massive reach. But if he works his ass off and can apply quarterback pressures, then it was an awesome pick. He's more than a space eater. I mean, the guy won the Outland Trophy. You don't give the Outland Trophy to space eaters. He's going to move the pocket. And if he's taking double teams regularly, which he probably does, it's going to do wonders for Simmons. Or if Simmons is taking double teams, then Sweat's going to really be able to push the pocket. I mean, if Sweat is fit and playing with effort and desire and out there because he's fit, he's going to be a problem in some way, shape, or form. Now, time will tell if he's worth 38, but I don't think you can rail against the pick until we see what the deal is. Ryan Thompson wants to know, how's the O-line look as a whole in comparison to this time last year? I mean, I don't have this time last year frozen in my head. I think he's better than I think it's better. I mean, it's hard not to be better than a line that had Andre Dillard on it, right? I think Latham looks good. Latham is who, right now, Latham's on track to be who they thought he was, I would say, right? I think Skoronski's better. I think Cushenberry's clear upgrade from Brewer. I'm intrigued by Sadiq Charles. And I'm not as down on Nicholas Petit-Frere as everybody else in the world seems to be. So, I think that group is better. Brandon Ward wants to know if I can boost the audio on the calls. I certainly will try to do that in the future. And when I give people the number, I'll put on the voicemail asking people to be loud and clear. It'll ask if you want it to repeat. Oh, okay. Trey with the good information there. We're at 2:47. So I've got one more call from one more of my 22. Again, a new feature being made available to members of the site. And so Darren Hobbs with another Simmons-related question.
Hey, Paul. Darren Hobbs. Hope you're doing good. Quick question. I just want to ask, with all the Jeffery Simmons stuff in the news this week, what's your general vibe on what causes this kind of thing? Do you think this is something that the Titans as an organization kind of foster, where players are so sensitive to any type of criticism, whether it be from media or fans? Is it just simply player specific? Is Jeff a little soft? Or is this something that you think the Titans fan base fosters? Because I know that there's a large portion of the fan base that is much softer than I feel like other fan bases in terms of handling the media, talking or writing, speaking negatively about the team. Just love to get your thoughts on what the root of this type of issue is. Because I don't think you see this type of thing in other markets. Like, are players in New York and Chicago crying because some beat reporter wrote a bad article about them one day? Hope you're doing well. Appreciate you taking the voicemail. Go Titans.
We thank Darren Hobbs for his service. I did turn off a button in there. It didn't repeat. So thanks, Trey, for that advice. I hope everyone's okay where Darren Hobbs is, since there were sirens going off in the background. Does the organization foster this kind of thing? I think when a premier player in the organization gets to a certain point, he's beyond what they can do. Like, he has a certain amount of control. It's not unlike other businesses. Like, I'll use the media business. Once Adam Schefter gets to a certain point, he's more powerful than his bosses in a lot of ways, right? Adam Schefter is tweeting some stuff that his bosses maybe would have liked to have seen or approved, and he's tweeting that without any permission or say so from his bosses. He's his own boss in that regard. Does the fan base foster it? There's such breathless admiration for Big Jeff. You would think Big Jeff is like the most inventive nickname ever. Hey, there's a big guy. We're going to call him Big Jeff. And people are like, oh, Big Jeff. They react like Marianne from Brooklyn reacts to Howard Stern. So I think it's fostered by the fan base. When he bitches out the media on Twitter, you see the percentage of the fan base that immediately backs him and has no problem with the fact that he is not specific about who he's complaining about and is not specific about what he's complaining about. Now, if a member of the media had such a vague problem, a general tweet like that, a fan base would be absolutely hypocritical and critical of that person. Who are you talking about? What did they say? So it's not a two-way street there. How dare the media question that? So I think there is some organizational fostering. Again, I'll go back to what I said earlier. A member of the old staff asked me, who do they have that can control Jeff now? Do they have someone that can control Jeff? Indicating that they thought that, Vrabel and Terrell Williams jointly, controlled Jeff, helped him manage the anger that, again, I said before, helps make him a good player, but needs to wind down stepping off the field. A difficult psychological thing that makes the NFL complicated, complex, is a complex thing for these guys. We've read stories about people who've had issues with it, and I'm sympathetic to that ask, but we've seen a lot of guys manage it better than Jeff has been managing it lately. And Jeff has in the past said, I'm not that guy. So I don't know. The general vibe, AJ Brown was warned by his closest media people here about what Philly was going to be like for him when he got there. And he ended up calling into a radio show to bitch about his treatment or to make his case. So I think a lot of people who have spent their careers in Tennessee don't really understand what it's like elsewhere, what it can be like. I joking in the media room the other day after Callahan made the comment that Easton asked about earlier, that we should, or it'd be great if, it'd be great for the Titans if everybody in Philadelphia and New York could spend a day in Nashville. It would help them free agent wise. Like, oh my God, this is all these guys have to deal with. I'd love to play here. It's a lot easier. And if all of these guys who think that this is some negative media place could spend a day in Philly or New York, realize what it's like in the big city. I think their complaints about whatever goes on here would be wound down substantially. So again, those voicemails, I used 3 today, one from Simon Kuharsky, one from John Kemper, one from Darren Hobbs. I'll put that phone number out for the membership. I'll send it in a text, and I will put it on the Facebook page. I may put it in a post that's member accessible only. You can load up my voicemail box. And I will do podcasts as reliant on those as is possible. I'm going to hit a few other notes that I had here, and we'll be done. I appreciate you coming. Efficient, not missing much. Quiet, but number 2. Who is that about? Mason Rudolph. So we've talked about Levis facing a tougher D and struggling with it sometimes in terms of the pressure, in terms of what the defensive backs are doing against his receivers, and that Willis is the beneficiary of a third team defense that really isn't doing that. I'd like to see Willis with the twos some just to see how he can do against them. Mason Rudolph's not been talked about, but he's been efficient. He's not missed much. He's kind of quiet. And those are all kind of the qualities you want in a number 2 quarterback, I think. So I think he's doing what you would expect him to do. Tyler Boyd went over Roger McCreary the other day for a catch on the sideline that was a highlight that a lot of people caught. And I thought McCreary did a pretty good job defending it. This was a prime example to me of a 6'2", 203 guy making the most of what he had against a 5'11", 190 guy. And that may be a play that you just can't win as a defender that's perfectly drawn up to take advantage of a matchup where you have 3 inches and 13 pounds. And Boyd reached over and plucked the ball away. And that's the way it works. Thomas Odukoya, again, is flashing. And this guy, I don't think the Titans are keeping 4 tight ends. Nick Vannett is going to be the third guy. But I think Odukoya deserves to be on the practice squad as a guy who could be called up if one of the 3 tight ends get hurt. And that means, I'm sure, I haven't checked, but I would feel confident he's still eligible for the international exemption. The league wants as many international guys in the NFL pipeline as they can get. And so Odukoya would have an international exemption, which would allow him to be an extra guy on the practice squad that doesn't count against the 16, I think it is. But then you have to activate him to the practice squad, and he has to spend, I think, 3 weeks on the practice squad as a regular practice squatter before he could be called up. So if a guy gets hurt, Odukoya is never going to be the first call up to come and replace that guy. There's always going to be somebody in front of him. Maybe Martin Robinson is showing well enough to be that guy. Maybe there's a waiver wire claim. I don't know. But at some point, I would think that Odukoya making training camp contributions is good enough to be one of the 16 on the practice squad, to not be an exemption, and then to be available to appear in an NFL game if and when the Titans need a tight end. So I would like to see that happen. Cedric Gray, I think I mentioned him earlier, has been very quiet. For as much noise as Jarvis Brownlee has made, and he's been terrific and looks like a 5th-round home run, Cedric Gray, is, as I mentioned earlier, just making no kind of push at Jack Gibbons. 6'2", 234, rookie out of North Carolina, 4th-rounder. And I suspect it's going to be a while for Cedric Gray, who's not made a lot of noise. So that's everything I wrote down that I wanted to talk to you guys about. Be sure to check out Zen Sports, my sponsor. Use code TN Paul when you sign up there, and you get a free membership here. Look for that text number, or for the number to leave a voicemail. Great new feature that we've got going here. I appreciate all of you coming by. Please retweet this, show your friends, and stay tuned for a lot of great new content at paulkuharsky.com. I appreciate you. We'll see you again soon. Don't block the box. Be sure to lock your